Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast, the post-Father's Day episode. And to celebrate Father's Day, we decided dudes only. So it's myself.
This one's for you, Dad.
Dudes only. I heard someone describe this phenomenon once as dingers only, which maybe that's not PG enough for this podcast. But I guess a dinger is another term for that's right, folks.
Peen?
Father's Day episode. It's another word for the peen. Yeah, the hang down.
Okay.
So this week it's dingers only on the podcast. It's your boy Illeagle 86. It's your boy Techtic. Nerd Bomber is indisposed. We have not fired her.
So that image that I had sent you would have been a perfect episode, album cover. For those of you who don't know, I had sent him a picture of, when you can buy a kielbasa and it's in a big U? Well, you could just put two buns on each side, each leg of the U and eat it that way together.
Now, was that an actual, did you cook that? Or did you just find that picture?
I found that on the Google.
It's dingers only. It's a sausage fest. Yeah, we didn't fire Nerd Bomber. And in fact, Nerd Bomber would be the one who had the power to fire either of us. Hopefully she doesn't. I guess we can think of this episode without her as kind of a mini interview, even though we both already have the job. We're going to be talking about the Day of the Devs today, which I don't know how I feel about the name, but basically this is the portion of Summer Games Fest. We're just now getting around to this. That, basically at the conclusion, we get a bunch of indie games all at once. There were 21 trailers. I don't know that we're going to get to all of them, but we're going to run through a bunch of those. Cozy little indies usually had trailers that were either less than a minute or maxing out at a minute and a half. So just kind of nice little bite size looks into the worlds of people who have poured multiple years into making something that we can buy for $5, which it's just a great time to be alive. We're going to be talking about Blade. In particular, the MCU's version of Blade that seems to be failing completely to get off the ground. And we're also going to be looking at A Quiet Place, The Road Ahead. More on that later. But I have to loosen us up here, I wanted to ask you, Techtic, because we're undergoing a massive cultural shift in our household here in the Illeagle household. And by massive cultural shift, what I mean is that since the dawn of time, since I don't know, when did I meet my wife? 2017. We have been an Amazon Fire Stick family. I don't know that choice was made in a conscious manner, or if it just kind of happened to us and we were okay, we're an Amazon Fire Stick family.
I think that happens to you. And it's bestowed upon
it just happens to you. Yeah. And, we're not really, actually, at the time especially, most of our TVs were not smart TVs, so to make them smart, we would buy an Amazon Fire TV Stick. Fast forward to now, I don't know if you've had this experience. I don't know what your Fire TV experience is, but we've had multiple now, probably I think 4 of them, maybe 4 or 5, where the Fire TV Stick will just kind of go. It goes to Fire TV heaven. It decides I'm done working in the correct way. And with this latest one, I was you know what? We're defecting. We are now a Roku TV family. So we just got our first Roku stick. We have, for context, we have multiple smart TVs that are Roku driven now. Love the Roku interface. Never really had a problem with Roku. I have problems with the Fire Stick all the time. I don't know if this is just me, but yeah, do you weigh in on this? Where are you?
I have a Roku stick that probably predates your first Amazon Fire Stick purchase. This sucker will not die. It is slower than its younger brethren, but it will not die.
It's got a lot of mileage on it. I mean, my experience has not been with the sticks. It has been with the actual smart TVs. We have a TCL, we have a Hisense, and they're both Rokus. And I'm aware that when it's actually in the TV, it's probably different in some way. But the interface is going to be the same. It costs $19.
I don't think
we got it on sale.
I don't think it's that it's your Fire Sticks are dying. I think so. All of the apps running on it update their firmware or software. Yeah. And in order for it to keep running that software, the Fire Stick needs to update its firmware to be able to support it. I'm wondering if there's no updates sent out, so it just becomes obsolete. If you left a Roku stick unplugged for years and then plugged it back in, it will prompt you to update it, and then it'll run. It'll run fine.
Well, you mentioned the thing with apps updating, and I'm sure that's right. But my latest experience with my Fire Stick dying, and I'm sorry, now I'm just telling a story, but this is happening to me, and I've noticed this before with Fire Sticks when they're hanging on, by their fingernails to being alive, you will boot it up and it'll be like struggling to come up. And the first thing you see when you get to the home screen is a bunch of freaking commercials, bunch of ads. And I'm like, no, I wanted to load the things
Are
that
all
I
the
wanted
ads
to do.
Buy
I
a
don't.
new Fire Stick.
No, the ads are like, but I will say, especially right now, The Boys, that's an Amazon property, I believe. So many ads for The Boys on the Fire Stick. And like, I've never watched The Boys. I've heard it's great. Never watched it. Either way, I'm aware of it. If I want to watch it, I will do so on my own terms, Amazon. You blasting an ad at me when I turn the Fire Stick on or when I turn the TV with the Fire Stick on, unprompted, it's not going to get me to watch the show. I talked about this on the podcast before.
I think this is commonplace with all Amazon devices. Even like Alexa, she gets like stupid after like a year and a half, and it's like you gotta put her out to pasture.
Now Roku, and again, maybe the stick is different. You can tell me, but like when I turn my Roku TV on, there's like so Roku has this thing called Roku City. For those that don't know,
I love Roku
the
City.
buildings in the background. Everyone loves Roku City. It's cute. It's classic. They put ads in Roku City as like billboards, and I'm like, that's creative and it's unobtrusive. They put ads on like the Roku home screen, but it's just a picture in the background, very subtle. You barely even see it unless you're looking for it. It's not a video that plays at you. And good for you, Roku. I think that's a great decision. I've defected. I won't be taking questions, but if you want to leave me a comment on Twitter, at @OWLegal86, where are you? You're a soldier in a war. What side are you on? I guess is the way I'll put it. So we haven't even taken that out of the box yet. It just came in today, but that's the happy habs. That's not my what are you up to Wednesday. That's just like, it's something that happened to me that I felt like it was important. Given how much we talk about TV and like technology on this show, I felt like I should probably just share that little anecdote. What about you? What's going on in your neck of the woods? Do you want to just get into the topics, or do you have any fun little nuggets to share?
I'm sufficiently lubricated because, as I've told you prior to the show, I made sure to, those lemonade glasses you get from the fair? I made sure to down an entire margarita's worth of that volume of fluid. And if you're familiar with how to make a margarita, it is a little bit of alcohol plus a little bit of alcohol, agave syrup, and lime juice. And that's it. There's no tonics or anything to water that sucker down. So I'm feeling great. I'm feeling lubricated. I am wet, like lubricated. Like
so. Yeah, that's good. Let me ask before we start though. I mean, like because we've been talking for like almost an hour at this point before hitting the record button. When was the last time you went to the bathroom? Do you need to go to the bathroom?
Oh no, I took this. So like I'm on probably the come down. Like I had drank this a while ago, and right. I'm just kind of, when you have a margarita, it just kind of sets you off on like a good foot to like have a good day. Like it's kind of like, it's like day drinking. Like the rest of your day is good. Right. Probably take a nap after this, but I'm feeling great.
Now you're taking a nap after this. It's gonna be like 10 o'clock. Yeah, at that point, just go to bed. Okay. Isn't that right? I mean, I guess we'll see. Well, you mentioned this, so before we get to the news, just one more dude topic. I'm going to call this a dude topic because I think it is a dude topic, but someone can tell me if I'm being heteronormative. So you said today you were in the pool, you had a marg. I just ran into this yesterday. The time-honored issue of you're in the pool, you've had a beverage or two, and you feel the need to break the seal. How do you manage this? It doesn't ruin my day when this happens, but like, I almost feel like I need to, but when you break the seal, you have to go more and more. So like, basically, being in the pool and having to go to the bathroom is the worst. That's the whole point I'm trying to make here. Dude topic accomplished, but like, I don't know if you have any hot tips, how you manage it. Or
it is sufficiently easier of a problem to solve as a dude as opposed to a female, because technically the world is our bathroom.
Well, see, you're not wrong, but like in the situation I was in yesterday, it was like, do I pee in someone's backyard? And the answer was definitely no. So like, but yes, in a lot of cases, you're right.
If you're in someone else's pool, you have to dry off and use their bathroom. It's a whole ordeal. It's
a great word for it. It's an ordeal. So anyways, I hope no one is going through that as they listen to this, because it's just horrible. Let's talk about A Quiet Place, the road ahead. Just to kind of wet our whistles here, do a little video gaming before we get into the Day of the Devs. So just full context for you, Techtic, and for the listeners, I have not seen A Quiet Place 2 yet. I probably will at some point. I also will probably watch the one that's coming out, the day one that's coming out, I think later this summer. I just haven't gotten around to it. My wife is somewhat vocally not like anti A Quiet Place. She thought the first one was kind of dumb, which like, I'm not going to speak for her and get into her reasons for that. But as a
Are you
result,
anti-subtitles? That might have dissuaded
No, I'm pro
people.
subtitles.
Okay.
I'm extremely pro subtitles, and so is she.
And-
Subtitles
okay.
are not the problem. No, subtitles are not the problem. I'll say that definitively. But as a result, I haven't watched the second one, and I may not watch the third one for a while. Now, when I queued up this trailer, I went into it with expectations, which was a mistake. Let me just say that right off the bat. This is a game that's coming out in 2024. It's coming to PlayStation 5, PC, Xbox Series X and S. This is a trailer that's very interesting because I think it's A Quiet Place, The Road Ahead is a first-person single-player horror game. This is fully a cinematic. This is not someone playing the game. This is not a gameplay trailer. However, they're definitely trying to give you a sense of what you will be doing.
This is a little bit of
gadgets you will be using.
With
I don't think I agree.
Well, you can see even the player takes out the noise meter.
I think they want us to see that you can use a noise meter, but I still think that was all cinematic stuff. I think it was an in-game cinematic, or like it was footage specifically crafted for the trailer. You will have a meter like that when you play, I'm sure. That's why they're showing us. They're like, oh, you're going to get to use this kind of thing. What I'm curious about, I guess, is, I've played survival horror games a lot. It's a genre that I'm very fond of. My thing is, with these aliens in the Quiet Place universe, if they get there's no fighting these things. Like, I know they kind of fight them in the first one, but like, I think these things are so terrifyingly larger than life and just vicious that I think the whole game is going to be, if you attract one, you just die. That's it. Like, I don't know that there's going to be combat. Like, that's kind of my question here.
I disagree a little bit, and the reason if you've seen A Quiet Place 1 and 2. This game is positioned perfectly to be a horror video game. I think doing this, I have to say it, was the absolute best choice. As far as the gameplay mechanisms, I think a good thing to compare this to would be The Last of Us, the clickers. You don't take on clickers. You're not shooting them. You're not going one-on-one combat. What you're doing is you're using noise to put them in a trap or distract them or things like that. And so, like, that's what this game is going to be. This is going to be The Last of Us Clickers edition, the entire story. And that's perfect. That's how you're going to look at, like, flipping switches to draw them to an area. And maybe that whole area is doused in gasoline and you light it on fire. And it's going to be all these little things and puzzles to move you and progress you through the story. But in that sense, you are going to be technically taking them on and having some combat, but it's not going to be direct. It's going to be indirect combat and more traps and things like that.
I don't know if combat is the term I would use. I mean, I guess thinking about the gameplay, obviously rule number one is don't be heard. But then, there's a lot of games, The Last of Us certainly being one very good example, and as you know, one that's near and dear to my heart. But like, I think Amnesia worked the same way, which Amnesia, The Dark Descent, was like a super popular game. It's just like, if something catches you, that's it. You're dead. I think the Slender Man games also work this way. Now, granted, I have never played the Slender Man games.
I believe in the Slender Man.
I've seen them played.
There was like, if you like successfully did a quick time, you can like kind of nudge them and get away. But it was hard. It was like really hard.
They're not in. These are things that you're not intended to fight, I guess, is the point. And I agree. I think it's a great concept. Like I said, I went into this trailer with expectations that I thought it was going to be goofy. I thought you were going to be fighting the monsters head on, hand to hand, guns, whatever. And I don't think that's what this should be. I don't want to call this a walking simulator because it's not. It's like, but I think it's going to be a lot of just like walking around, finding stuff, crafting stuff, doing things in such a way, sneaking around, obviously, like you said, causing distractions. I think it could be really good. Now, this is, again, one like the company that's making it, I don't think I've ever heard of. I don't know that I would call this a indie, so to speak, if only because the IP is so powerful at this point. But I am definitely curious about the price point, which is obviously something we don't know anything about at this point. But, this is like I don't know. I'm going to put it to you. How much would you pay for this?
I think this would be a probably $25 video game. That's kind of the where I would get on board with it, and I'd probably play it. Honestly, for me, the anti-horror household, I would play this just based on my love for the franchise as a whole. I do have a question for you.
You would certainly be playing it by yourself. Yeah.
If you're in this world with these type of aliens and crafting or finding things, what is your item of choice to like find or craft?
Oh, it's a good question.
I'm going to tell you what my answer is, just to maybe help you out. I would do a pair of walkie-talkies. And the reason why I say a pair is because you have two options.
Oh, you can squawk it? You can squawk it when it's somewhere.
Yeah, you can put them next to each other, turn it on, and throw it. And it'll do that. Or you can put the volume way up on one and throw your voice, so to speak. Pull them away from you.
I think it's more... Because when you just like toggle it, it like squawks. Like I wouldn't be doing any talking with a walkie-talkie. That's too dangerous. Because if you're talking, you're making noise.
Yeah.
You want to be able to make noise somewhere else. Like those like, well, no, the chattering teeth you have to wind up, and then you're standing right next to it. But like it's something like that. It's like something that's gonna make noise that's far away from you. Like one of those. Oh, an alarm clock. That's what you want.
Classic.
You want a portable
That's a
alarm
classic.
clock.
Yeah, you set the time. It's basically like a setting off a bomb. It's a good answer.
Because I was first thinking like.
An oven timer
I was thinking like
would probably be the best.
Oh yeah, like an egg timer. Yeah, that's good.
Because now there's no
the problem
like,
is the problem is it's single use. You can only use it once because the monster is going to destroy it, and then you're back to square one. So like, I almost want like something to wear that's going to make me just generally quieter, but I don't know what that is. You know, I would need to think more about that. But like, certainly nothing like no like swishy pants or anything. Yeah. That'll get you killed out here.
The only thing to make me generally quieter is just to die. I think just death.
Just peanut butter. I would say peanut butter. You put peanut butter in my mouth, I'm quiet for a long time. Yeah.
Basically, a golden retriever.
This is coming out in 2024. We don't know more specifically than that. I agree with you. I would have said $20. 20 to 25. I think if you're over 30, you've gone too far. This is from Saber Interactive, recently freed from the Embracer Group, which we've talked about on the podcast before, developed by Stormind Games. So yeah, we'll see what happens with this, but I think this does springboard us nicely into maybe just more purely indie titles that were displayed in Day of the Devs. So, you know, like I said, there's a lot here. We're kind of going to go through them probably pretty rapid fire in no particular order. I guess, you know, Techtic, not to put you on the spot. There's fewer people to put on the spot with Nerdbomber not here. But I have to imagine, and I'm not necessarily guessing what it was, but there's got to be at least one here that really tickled your fancy. This feels like I guess I associate your game playing habits with indie a lot. And I don't know if that's actually accurate, but you're a side-scroller guy. There's a few side-scrollers here. Was there anything that you really felt deserves high praise?
So there's one that like just looked stunning, which in this showcase there was a lot of just kind of like Game Boy-esque looking one, side scroller, and there's really only one that was 3D, and that was Tides of Tomorrow. Right. That looked like it was kind of looked like almost a Telltale game potentially, but it looked like it could have interesting combat where you can watch all of your decisions unfurl and play through it, and there's like this like I can't tell if you can see the past or if
you can see. So this was confusing, and I had to read about this. You're actually seeing the actions of other players. So it's described as an asynchronous multiplayer game. So I agree. This one, they saved this one for the last. This was the last one they showed, and it was the most. It was like the most trying to be AAA game that we saw in the entire showcase. Asynchronous multiplayer, I don't know how you pull that off. So basically, you know, what the trailer shows is that like you see, you're in a conversation with a character and you see a different version of yourself, like from a different timeline or something, like you said, leaving a knife in a spot for you to get and use. So then you pick it up and use it because you saw what happened. That's not you doing that. That's a player, a different player who also played through the level. So players go through the game and they're leaving breadcrumbs for the next player, but like I don't understand. I want to know a lot more about the mechanics of that because it seems very complicated. I'm not saying it's not going to work. If anything, it's going to work and it's going to be very cool, but it just feels very, very ambitious.
I do wonder if it's often like to say, yeah, some other player did X. I wonder if it's a randomly generated situation and it really has nothing to do with it pulled a specific player's situation. You know what I mean? Because there's only so many outcomes that a game can output. And so to have a randomizer function in there probably makes more sense from an indie developer standpoint.
I'm sure that right is reserved for them in dire straits, but they are specifically saying multiple people's playthroughs of the same story can impact one another. So like, I don't know how you manage that. It seems like like you said, any player can do anything. They can make a stupid decision just to see what happens. So like, how do you manage that within the framework of the game is an interesting question. But that's the general conceit. And, you know, a lot of these games, it's worth noting, like a lot of these indies, like you said, there's a lot of like Game Boy looking games. And then it almost seems like with indies like this, every game needs to have, you know, because you're not relying on super powerful graphics or high production values, you're instead relying on a lot of the times a hook that can be summarized in one sentence, right?
So,
and yeah, go ahead.
With Tides of Tomorrow, that had both visually stunning and as well as an interesting gameplay. There was one that I thought had the hook, wasn't very like stunning graphically, that from a concept, I mean, you should have loved this game. I'm expecting you to be like, yes, that was the one I was going to bring up as soon as I say it. Are you ready? While Waiting.
I'm ready, yeah.
This was WarioWare coded.
While Waiting is very interesting. And yeah, this one is basically at times in your life when you're bored and you're waiting for something, it's almost like games, the character is waiting and games are happening to him while he waits. It is WarioWare-esque. I also thought it was a little bit Untitled Goose Game-esque. It looks like you're trying to accomplish certain goals that you have written down. This actually isn't the one that jumped out to me the most. It does look interesting. But it does, this one, I don't want to say it was a little gimmicky, but again, the gimmick of this one is like, oh, you're waiting and waiting is boring, but not anymore. Like that's kind of just the whole... That's their whole shtick, right?
But like, think about the last time you've waited in line. Did you or did you not kind of make your own mental game to pass the time? I do that all the time. It's people watching it is one of those games.
Right. I have done that. I mean, sadly, nowadays, more often than not, I'm just on my phone. But like, yeah, I think that back in the day, especially when I was a kid, I would do that all the time. The weirdest game I saw, we'll jump around a lot here. There's definitely one or two that I was really taken with that I want to bring up. But the weirdest one I saw that like, I'm also going to say this is the worst one that I saw. Building relationships. It was just so weird. It's Building Relationships. This is a game that its own studio describes it as like a short hike, which a short hike is a game that I think is fairly successful, but stupid. And yeah, it looks stupid. Like it's the whole thing is you're a house and you're rolling around. You're playing as a house. You're rolling around and you're dating other houses. It's very weird.
I need to know if you can fuck other houses.
They imply
just
that
for research. Like it says
at one point in the trailer,
but like
at one point in the trailer, there's a koi section where like, yeah, I just pulled up the screenshot. He's talking to another house. Your house, and you're talking to another house named Chester. And Chester asks you, do you identify more as bottom floor or a rooftop?
I didn't. So I wasn't getting innuendos from that.
Well, that is an innuendo. Are you a bottom or are you a top? That's what that is. So like,
cool.
I'm
in.
I think this one's gonna garner a player base just based on curiosity alone. People being like, this makes no sense. If it costs like $5, some people might be like, oh, this looks weird.
This can't be more than $5. Also, do you wonder if this was not the intent at all in early dev, but they accidentally put like a house sprite on something and they're like, hey, look at this. And they just went with it. I do wonder a lot how a game like this gets made. Like there's a lot of games here that like for example, A Little to the Left. Like, and granted, we just saw DLC for that. That game's been out for a while now. But like A Little to the Left, I totally understand the conceit. I understand why they came up with it. There's a lot of games like that where they're kind of just like cozy arranger games that the gameplay itself is kind of secondary and the vibes are primary. And like, I understand that. Houses dating each other, I don't know what there is to understand. It's just very strange. I'm convinced it was exactly that. It was a mistake and they rolled with it. They were doing something stupid and they said, let's just see what happens.
That could very well be. I want to talk about Simpler Times, which was the first one, and this was my second least favorite.
This was literally a game that is living and dying off vibes. There's nothing to it. It literally says this is just
and they
vibes.
cop to that. Yeah, they cop to that, and they, I'm sorry, but like Simpler Times, it's almost like a meta thing of like, if I want to do the things that you do when you play Simpler Times, I would just do them in real life. Like there's no score, there's no goal in Simpler Times. It's just like, be in your house and listen to a record. It's like, well, I could just do that without playing a game, and then I'm just doing it. So this is a conceit that I don't understand. And again, a lot of people might be like shouting at me in the comments right now, but I accept that continuing to bop around. Cairn. This is a game that I will never play. Yeah, I'll never play it because I was just sweating watching this.
I want to give the developers credit to the level of detail that they put into this actual climbing game. If you watch the trailer carefully, the way even the legs are shaking as they're climbing up the mountain, is just like they really took their time to study what it looks like and how the body changes and does things under strain that are involuntary. And like, god damn, did this look stressful, because they really took the time to paint what stress looks like.
It's a realistic climbing control scheme that they're touting, that like you're controlling each one of this person's limbs in climbing a mountain. But like, I thought this one was funny. Like, I'm not going to play this because it made me sweat just watching it. Like at one point, you fall off the mountain, like you fall off and you dangle on a rope. And then another point, you're in a tent that's on a rope. And like the thing that was funniest about this one is that the character that you're playing as, she's going through something. Like she's screaming half of this trailer. She's just screaming in rage at the mountain, which I thought was very funny. I think that one's going to be good. It's just, again, that one's not for me. That's coming in 2025 to PC and consoles.
Have you ever been climbing before?
No, one time in high school, we had to climb a rock wall to like pass gym, and I kicked a ladder over.
See, you're going through something.
So scared. I was at the time, yeah.
It's adrenaline. It's emotional. So, like I said, I go back to, they conveyed this just, this is chef's kiss. I will never play this, but like they did a really good job, and I'm going to give them credit.
Now, we'll talk about one or two more, and then we'll take a little break here and come back and talk through some more. But a Ranger, we have seen this before. There's a couple games here that I think we've seen before. A Ranger was one of them. This is coming July 25th, so this might have been the release date trailer the first time we saw the release date. I want this one. This was
an interesting puzzle game. So the concept behind it is this particular character moves differently than everyone else in their world, and when they move left, right, up, or down, tiles, almost like a conveyor, rotate with them and unveil new paths, unlock things, change the map, and help you progress and explore. And it's kind of a really interesting puzzle, 2D, not 2D, maybe it's 3D. I don't know what I would call this, but
yeah, it's hard to say.
But it's an interesting, it's an interesting puzzle game.
Yeah, this one looked good. July 25th, PS5, PC, and Nintendo Switch. One more that I wanted to mention, and this one, the trailer for this one, IGN hid it from me, so I had to go watch it myself. But a game called Screenbound, which is another one that I believe we have. Techtic, I'll try and jog your memory because I'm almost positive that we've seen this one before. Your character is playing a Game Boy, and you are moving. It's hard to even describe it. You are playing the 2D game, and as you control the player in the 2D game on the little Game Boy, your character in the 3D game is moving in the same way. So it's almost like you're playing two games at once. It's like, this is kind of like the first one we talked about, Tides of Tomorrow, where like, I don't even know how they're going to pull it off. I don't know if I could even play it effectively. I would need to try it before buying it because my brain might not be able to process those streams at the same time.
I could see my neck like trying to crane around that screen. You know how when you're playing a video game and you're like, you think if you lean a little bit, you can jump a little bit farther. I could see me doing that the entire gameplay to try to like help. But I can tell you, forward motion is going to piss me off.
It messes with you. Yeah, I think that's the whole point. And like, again, that's the gimmick of this game. Super inventive, big swing, very big swing. So that's what it characterizes a lot of these games. We're going to take a short break now, and we'll come back to talk through the rest as well as Marvel's Blade. But before we take our break, Mr. Stephen Keller, one of our Patreon producers, gets this weekly shout out. Stephen, here's to you. We've enjoyed our time with you on the show, supporting us and being on the air with us, and getting to be a part of all the content that we're putting together here. Steven supports us at the highest of our 3 levels of Patreon support, which is the night level. Gets him access to the monthly secret segment and the monthly vlog, as well as, of course, the occasional guest spot on the show, this producer shout out, input into the weekly game segment, which this week we will be skipping because Nerd Bomber is not here and we can't very well play a game in that circumstance. And yeah, there's also a Squire level of support, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, and a page level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. So you can head over to patreon.com/Online Warriors Podcast Get the details there. Say hi to Steven. Say hi to us. Say hi to Nerdbomber. She's over there. She's still alive. She's just not here right now. So yeah, patreon.com/Online Warriors podcast. Get the details there. Consider helping us keep this thing going. Thanks again to Steven. We will be right back to talk through more Day of the Devs and Marvel's Blade.
Hi, I'm Kevin DeCristofano.
And I'm Sean Flanagan.
And we are the Ninja Turtle Nerds, your weekly podcast covering the Ninja Turtle comic book series one issue at a time. Plus the video games, the cartoon show, the VHS tapes. If it's Ninja Turtles, we'll cover it. Ninja Turtle Nerds is available wherever you get your podcast.
All right, so what is your exposure to the classic movie Groundhog Day? First of all, if you say anything other than that it's good, we're no longer friends.
It's a classic.
It's a classic. Okay, just want to make sure. So,
Bill
hello
Murray,
again.
Come on.
This is another one that I had to go hunt down the video for it, but think of it basically as Deathloop, but way less intense. Basically, it's solving puzzles. It's basically 2D. I just wanted to mention this one in passing because it looked really cute, and like I liked the Deathloop experience, but as I mentioned on the podcast, I believe I just stopped playing that game. It is hard. And I think this is going to be a lot more breezy. So I wanted to mention that one. Techtic, I'm going to kick it over to you because I feel like I've been monopolizing the Day of the Devs conversation. Any other ones you want to shout out as wrestling your jimmies?
So there's two that sort of had, I guess, I want to talk about Pedal Runner. It was hitting me in the nostalgia hard. It is a Game Boy Advance style game. And like, when I say style, I mean like picture like Pokemon Red and Blue, or even it had color. So I guess picture Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, and like down to like the soundtrack, the audio, sound effects, everything. It was just hitting Game Boy Advanced tropes after Game Boy Advance tropes. So like it hit me in the nostalgia. And then the other side, it was like you're just delivering people's pets. Like it's a feel good, it's nostalgia, it's checking all those boxes, and like I'm here for that one. That looked awesome to me.
Yeah, see this one, it's interesting. Like the era that you're describing, and you know, the era that they're clearly trying to evoke nostalgia of that era of games. It's an era, like I didn't miss the Game Boy Advanced era. I was there. I was playing games. I was not playing RPGs. I wasn't playing anything like Pokemon. So like a lot of what I saw in this trailer, I had the conscious thought, which was an okay thought to have, of just like, this is not for me, it's for someone else. And I support and accept that. Now, you just mentioned the vibes are good, cute vibes. We've talked about a lot of games here that just cute vibes, good times, good feels. I'll let you get to your second one in a second, but I want to sandwich what I imagine are going to be two good vibes games around a bad vibes game. You need the bad vibes. Like, again, Karma the Dark World. This game is constructed as basically...
We're making a bad vibe sandwich, by the way. My second one is going to be a yeesh.
Okay, all right, fair enough. But Karma the Dark World, I mean, it is the antithesis of like, what was the first game called? Simpler Times, of like, it's like, what if you don't know what the gameplay is? The gameplay is secondary. What is primary is the vibe is bad. And you need to figure out why. Like, there's a mystery to be solved. There's certainly a narrative. There's a world that's built. And you have to, you know, peel back the layers and probably be horrified, or at the very least unsettled. So I don't know that I would play this one necessarily. It looked cool, but I feel like you need to kind of sprinkle that in the midst of all the like, hey, we're all happy and times are good. So what's another times are bad game that you wanted to mention?
Tom the Post Girl. This was like, yikes. It's about a
weirdest game award.
Post girl named Tom, and she has a bad habit of snooping on her neighbors, and like to the point where she like stalking them and like finding out their like creepy, not so nice habits and things that they do, and it's just like yikes. And then like the picture of it is just her standing in a window, just big bulging eyes, smiling, looking into people's homes, like creepy. Yeah. Not a fan.
The art style is phenomenal. I haven't watched Salad Fingers in a while, but it made me think a little bit of Salad Fingers.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Kind of evoking some old animation style. You know, it's worth noting, too, with a lot of these games, there are a number of games. Tom the Post Girl is one, and I'm not going to talk too much about these, but like Phoenix Springs was another. Koira, if I'm pronouncing that right, is the third one, where like it's almost as though the developers of these games wanted to make a short film, like an animated short film, to be nominated for an Oscar, and instead they wound up making a game because the visual style is so distinctive. It's clearly trying to evoke something just in the visuals themselves, and I find that just fascinating. And yeah, Tom the Post Girl, really, really weird. Again, this is one I would pay $5 for this just to understand what the deal is, you know. And I think that there are a fair few games here that fall into that category.
But like, if you're gonna creep into your neighbor's windows, you're not gonna just stare. You're gonna be respectable about it. You're gonna be walking the dog, you know, at a slower pace than usual past their open blinds. This is just too much.
I like the idea of unfolding a story about someone and again kind of solving a mystery in a sense and using it to determine whether you deliver a package or not, or like what state you deliver the package in, I guess, is what the decision that you're making. Now, continuing to kind of roll along here, Battle Vision Network, and again I'm jumping around, Battle Vision Network and Cozy Grove Camp Spirit. Now these were two games, I'm lumping them together because they both had ties to Netflix, which I thought was very interesting. We're seeing Netflix crop up, in particular with Cozy Grove. It was really touted at the end that it's exclusive for Netflix members. It's going to come basically ad-free, microtransaction-free to Netflix members as part of their subscription, I guess. It's a mobile game.
They ripped Animal Crossing. Just straight ripped out. Even like the fishing animation with the fish silhouette and the way it pops, they ripped that right out of it. I'm surprised that there isn't like people going, whoa, what the heck, man?
I mean, this one washed over my eyeballs. This is a game that, just based on everything I saw, I would never play it. So I really have no intention to. It doesn't surprise me to hear you say that. But yeah, so there was that one. And then, like I said, Battle Vision Network, which it looks like is it's trying to be like Eurovision, but it's also like you're battling PvP. I guess it's based on the formations and the like little animals that you have next to each other, and they attack and defend in certain ways. Honestly, this trailer I feel like was not very effective because I didn't understand what the game was at the end of it. It was just kind of a lot of flashy visuals and not anything else.
It looked like we're playing Bejeweled, honestly, to me. Sort of, yeah. Like if it stopped at mobile game, I would have been like, okay, that makes sense. But the fact that it's on PC and console seems weird.
Yeah, we may learn more about this one, but considering it's an indie game, I don't know how many more trailers we can expect for it before it just kind of comes out. And that, there's more that we could mention here, but most of the trailers that were, the cream rising to the top, I think we've really talked through. There's a number more that I think for the time being we're gonna skip just because the trailers are a little lower profile. Zookosis, Fear the Spotlight. Zookosis, by the way, I will mention in passing, it's the anti-Nerd Bomber game. I think Nerd Bomber is gonna have nightmares just about that game existing. It's a zoo where all the animals are creepy and infected with something, and you have to try and survive. Some others, UFO 50 was pretty interesting. It's actually a collection of 50 games that the developers are insisting are not mini games, but they're all interconnected. Techtic, I don't know if you saw the trailer for that one, but it might be worth checking out just because there's a lot of arcade style games, other games that have larger campaigns. The idea is they were all developed by a fictional company that was around from, I think, the early 80s to 1990, and they developed these 50 games that are all interconnected. So as you play through each one, the story is tied together throughout all the games, and there's a history about the company that becomes clear. That one's coming out September 18th. Again, I'm not looking to talk through the trailer necessarily because I didn't even watch the full video. It was fairly long, but it seems like
this
concept.
One looked not only interesting, but the various mini games and animation style within the mini games. It looks like it takes callbacks to a lot of like various retro games, like Super Mario, Doom, Street Fighter.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of different callbacks that you can kind of like glean from it, and you're like, oh wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, this felt like the biggest undertaking, and also, again, most of these games, if not all of them, we don't know how much they're going to cost, but I think considering it was in Day of the Devs, like this is an indie game that's not going to cost very much, and if you're a value person, this is probably where the value is because you're getting basically 50 games.
This one was definitely up there on my list, and I'm glad you made sure to make mention of it.
Yeah, I mentioned Koira in passing. It's again narrative-driven game. There, you're a person and a dog going through a forest doing something. It looks very peaceful. So yeah, again, Twitter @OWLeo86 is my account. We have @OW_Techtic, @OW_Nerdbomber if you like talking to her, and @OnlineWarriors1. That's our main show account. Hit us up there. Let us know what we talked about in Day of the Devs that we got wrong, what we didn't talk about enough, what we got right. etc., etc. Let's talk about Blade. Now, Marvel's Blade, this is a movie that's been in production or in some state of production for, my goodness, I think 4 or 5 years now. To be clear, I am not referring to the Blade that came out in 1998, which was the Wesley Snipes movie that I think did fairly well. This is the MCU Blade, which is supposed to star Mahershala Ali. It's supposed to be released next year, November 7th, 2025. It just lost another director. This movie is going through a lot in the press in the past few weeks, because I know Mahershala Ali's agent is basically also saying that this is an unbelievable process to get this movie made, when it kind of seems like it should be a no-brainer. Techtic, my main question for you, just kind of as the comic guy, I mean, I know the gist of Blade, which is basically vampires and vampire hunters. Do you think that Blade is a project that is simply being harmed by the fact that it's occurring so late in the MCU cycle, so to speak? It feels like it should be one that should be poised for mainstream success, is I guess what I'll say.
I don't think you need to lump it in. I mean, it's very successful as a standalone. It doesn't need to be part of the universe. And so I don't think that that's the reason that it's kind of dealing with issues. I think it's just Hollywood as a whole. It kind of struggles to pick and choose what the right thing to back up is. I think you could very easily sell a solid story with Blade, and it doesn't need to be a superhero thing. You can even walk the line of, is it horror, right?
Right.
Without getting...
I mean, it's vampires after all.
Yeah, you don't need to get wrapped around the stupid MCU jokey tropes. You can kind of have it be its own thing and it'll do fine. I mean, think about and I know this is Sony, but think about, Venom. That started off kind of like gritty. It fell into the more comic-y side, but I think it's doing well.
Yeah. So Blade, just to kind of color what I was saying before, it was first announced at the 2019 San Diego Comic-Con. So again, we're going on basically 5 years now of this movie being in some level of development. And Mahershala Ali, by the way, part of why his agent brought up this movie's failures is that he's put off and turned down a lot of other projects that he could have done because this movie keeps kind of stop-starting. And he's an incredible actor. For those that haven't seen Moonlight, you should go watch that. So it just, I kind of wanted to talk about this because it just seems like this is a situation where Marvel can't get out of its own way. And like you said, Techtic, if the solution is to decouple it from the MCU, if that's what the problem is, then they should absolutely do that, because the MCU, I think, is currently experiencing enough problems. I'm not sure that you would want a movie like Blade 2 be associated with the MCU necessarily. So for some context on the MCU, the next 4 films from Marvel Studios: Deadpool and Wolverine, Captain America, Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and Fantastic Four. Brave New World, I know, is also, they had to do a lot of reshoots recently, and Deadpool and Wolverine, I think, is poised to do well, but I think that's going to be kind of a high noon for the MCU. And
Deadpool and Wolverine, that's another standalone thing that can do well. Thank you for bringing that up as well. You're bringing up great stuff today.
If Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't do well, that's going to shake things up quite a bit, because I think they're leaning on that as the tent pool. Okay, we can bring in Ryan Reynolds and bring in Deadpool, and it can carry us for a bit. I do question, and like you said, that movie could very well survive on its own. Does it need to be MCU-ified? Do they need to be making Paul Rudd jokes in the trailer? A lot of people would say no. I'm not sure I have a problem with it necessarily at this moment, but I'm going to be very, very curious to see how that works out. And I think it's going to be very telling in terms of how the next 4 movies work out for them. Anyways, MCU, still going on. Not as going on as it used to be, I guess, is kind of how I will characterize it. But yeah. That brings us to What Are You Up To Wednesday, which is how we're going to be closing the show out today, considering there's no game. So, Techtic, I'm going to go first here. I just want to talk through a couple things. I want to talk through a show that we started watching. It's a show called Your Honor. This is a show that was originally on Showtime, and it's now on Netflix. And it stars Bryan Cranston as a judge whose son kills someone in a hit and run. That's not a spoiler. It happens in the first 10 minutes of the show. And then basically Bryan Cranston's character has to try and figure out how to maneuver his son out of trouble. The trouble, which of course intensifies considering that the person he killed happens to be the son of a crime lord, which is very interesting. It's a very anxiety-inducing show because there are characters that make very poor decisions a lot of the time. They put other characters in terrible situations, and you're wondering how they're going to get out of it. And it's very, at times, I guess I'll say, it's sweaty.
You had me at Bryan Cranston.
He's phenomenal. He's phenomenal in it. He kind of always is, but this is no exception to that. I also started reading a book called Some Like It Darker. This is Stephen King's latest book. I believe it came out in May of this year. And it's a collection of short stories. And I'm about halfway through it. What's keeping me on my toes with it is that Stephen King's definition of short story, much in the same way that his definition of novel in terms of length, like it just varies a lot. So like there are stories in this book that are 20 pages long, and there's a story I just finished that's I think 160 pages, and a lot of people would say that's not a short story, that's just a novella in and of itself. But that, I think it kind of keeps things interesting as I roll through these stories. Really, really enjoying it. With Stephen King, at this point in his career especially, you kind of know what you're going to get, and you can kind of hang your hat on that. So I've been enjoying that. And then otherwise, I've just been playing through Wolfenstein the New Order, which has been a fun experience so far. A little bit dated for sure, but for what I want it to be, which is basically just a shooter and an occasional stealth shooter, it's filling the role very well. Without further ado, Techtic, I will turn it over to you to let us know what you have been up to.
So I've had a very summery week. The two things I want to make mention of are, the first thing is, we're in the heat of the Stanley Cup Finals. By the time you're listening to this, they might be over. The Florida Panthers might have won. Who knows? Who's to say? But when the Stanley Cup Finals were kicked off, we broke out the projector screen. It was a little hard to see it originally because it was still light out. But like once period 2 started going, it was beautiful night. Watching it outside, it was awesome. 10 out of 10 recommend. Picking up like a cheap projector, hanging up a sheet. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. And just watching stuff outside it's just a great time. We had it with chips and salsa. Can't go wrong. And then the other thing is my wife took me on a date to a baseball game. So we got some peanuts and Cracker Jacks, and it was just a good time. I love baseball in the summer. It's like on my what you got to do bucket list. So hopefully I can continue to check off my summer to-dos and have a good time.
Did you get a hot dog?
Yeah, so I didn't actually get Cracker Jacks. We got peanuts, hot dogs, and Dippin' Dots.
Yeah, I mean, no one buys Cracker Jacks. I don't have a problem with Cracker Jacks, but also like they're not very good. Shout out to Cracker Jacks.
You got to get peanuts though. Peanuts at a baseball game is something that Nerd Bomber actually introduced me to, and it's fantastic. Now,
did she surprise you? You said she took you on a date. Did she surprise you with this? Or was this
she just
like outing?
Well, sort of. She just like up and texted me and said, "Hey, I got us tickets. We're going." I was like, "Great, that sounds like fun."
That is always fun to kind of just have a plan made for you for the evening, and you're just kind of along for the ride. So yeah, that sounds great. I gotta get to a game myself. I haven't been to a baseball game in a long time. There was a stretch there where I was kind of, it sounds like maybe what you're doing,
like a seventh inning,
to one a year,
like a seventh inning.
Yeah, right. Just kind of going to one a year just to kind of get the experience, because like I'm not a baseball fan necessarily. It's kind of the experience. It's about the experience and the food, and So yeah, I mean, the way baseball is, I'll have many chances before the summer is out. So very good, sir. That brings us to the end of the episode. Techtic, this is a big week for you. This is a success. I mean, considering what your quiz streak has been, I guess I'll shout the records out right now. Nerd Bomber 9-5 today. Myself 8-5, Techtic 5-11, and Steven 1-1. Next week, I do believe Nerd Bomber hosts, I think she won last week, so we'll see what happens with that. But in the meantime, you are safe. You live to see another week, and I still need to watch Hawkeye, so I'll get right on that. We thank you all for joining us here at the Online Warriors podcast. If you liked what you listened to, or even if you didn't, you can head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a review there. And, I will just shout out, too, we have a lot of old episodes, and in particular, I had a friend of mine text me today. He may be listening to this episode. I don't know if he's listening to the current ones too, but he texted me out of the clear blue sky. I didn't even know he was a listener, and he said, "Hey, your interview with Greg Edmondson was really great. And if you're thinking, who's Greg Edmondson? I would encourage you to go back to that episode and find out, because it was a really fantastic interview. It's one that I'm very proud of, and I think we're all very proud of here. And it's a random thing to shout out, but I heard from someone today, and they reminded me of how great an experience that was. And we have a lot of great older episodes where we had a lot of interviews and talked about a lot of great things. There's a backlog for you to delve into if you're new to the Online Warriors podcast fandom. So consider doing that. Consider telling your friends, and have a fantastic week. Stay safe and keep on podcasting.